River City Girls has a strange place for me right now, and I wanted to use my channel to sort of talk about it and other side-scroller beat-em-ups that fall into the same genre. I realize that this channel isn't primarily focused on game reviews or anything like that, but this is a genre that's really close to my heart and a big reason why I like video games in the first place. So I just feel for me to be happy, I want to put this out there. As a prerequisite before we get into actually reviewing this game, I want to say I played it before and I didn't like it, but I replayed it for this video and have differing opinions from what I had before. So without further ado, let's review River City Girls. Okay, before I get into what makes a side-scroller beat-em-up good, I want to disclaimer that this is my opinion and it is okay to have a different opinion. Within reason. Anyway, the things I consider essential to making a side-scroller beat-em-up top tier are 1. Presentation, which is the way the game looks and feels as a cohesive piece of art. 2. Concept. Does its initial idea draw me in to play it in the first place? 3. Complexity. How much does the moment-to-moment gameplay feel like a playground for experimentation? 4. Payoff. Does putting time into learning the complexity even pay off? Is it worth doing that? 5. Balance. Is the game giving you everything you need to succeed? For the sake of this review, I won't mention any arcade beat-em-ups because their design philosophy is completely different in most cases to what makes a modern beat-em-up good. In most cases, they want you to spend as many quarters as possible to keep playing, which results in an insanely high difficulty spike that you cannot deal with in any other way. So, does River City Girls 1 and 2 follow these steps? Let's find out. As far as presentation goes, River City Girls knocks this out of the park. It's basically on another planet at this point. It really shows how much thought and focus went into the presentation for this game. A lot of people know that these games are set in the same universe as River City Ransom, which is regarded by many to be a pioneer for side-scroller beat-em-up games. But did you know that the River City games are also a part of an insanely large series of games called the Kunio-kun series? Well, the developers at WayForward absolutely did. It took me a long time to find out what Arc System Works was involved with in these games, but it turns out they own the rights to the Kunio-kun series, so that answers that question. They had nothing to do with the game design philosophy or anything like that, they just published it because they had the rights. The amount of references and visual treats that pay homage to where the series came from is overwhelming levels of fan service to anyone who knows anything about this stuff. But I never knew about any of this stuff before researching this video, so I just end up feeling pandered to when Billy, Jimmy, and Other members from Double Dragon show up as side characters or vendors in this one. They even have Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear in River City Girls 2. I understand fan service, I do. But then there's not walking on your own two legs if it goes too far. Alright, I get to talk about my favorite thing when it comes to video games now, the music. The music of the game has a pop-punk synthwave style most of the time. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan. The weird thing is, I like synthwave. A lot of people praise this game's music, and I will give credit where credit is due. Not many other beat-em-ups feature songs with lyrics in them, and I applaud the effort, making the tracks a little bit more diegetic to the world. One of the characters is a rock star, and her music plays everywhere. But if she's a rock star, why am I listening to this? How does this make any sense? No offense to Megan McDuffie, who did most of the music for the game, but it's just not hitting the way that it should. The only song with lyrics I actually liked was this one. Out of 2 games, this is the only one, and it's a fusion of Latin guitar and pop synth. What does that tell you? Jake Kaufman did the same thing in Double Dragon Neon and he killed it. Mango Tango is like one of my favorite songs. Other artists' contributions to the game were really good, had they been mixed or implemented in a way that I could actually hear them. Chipsel is and always has been a phenomenal composer and is predominantly featured in River City Girls 1 for the boss fight music. The intro and outro were composed by Nate Wants to Battle and Dale North, and they were fantastic and exactly the energy needed to pull people in to play the game. Wow, this is getting negative really quickly. I want to say that the music is very subjective, and personally most of it was a big L to me. However, I know that to a lot of people this music is really special, and I will not hold that against them at all. Just know that for my review, I do hold it against the game for reasons that I will get into later. The important takeaway is that they chose the style and stuck to it as a part of the game's identity. The plot of the game goes hand in hand with presentation for these games in my opinion. Basically the plot is you're playing as a schoolgirl beating up the entire city looking to rescue your boyfriends who have been kidnapped. How do we know they've been kidnapped? A picture, via text message of course. The concept itself is, what if a side-scroller beat-em-up was an open-world objective-based game? Which in concept, I have been waiting for a very long time. The format would make the game have more longevity by having you explore parts of the map you haven't been yet and finding more pathways to take. Adding exploration is a hard thing to juggle though, as is evident in any Metroidvania-styled game. But why? Well, if your exploration isn't rewarded in any significant way, then the game feels empty and more like a chore than a game. So, did River City Girls 1 and 2 execute its concept well? The short answer is no, but we're not here to state opinions and leave it at that. The reason the first River City Girls fails this check is simply because it had no reason to have any of these aspects in the first place. The objectives often boiled down to be just do this to get this thing, to bring back the thing so you can do this thing so you can do the thing.
So you want us to go get your keys for you, then you'll use your crane to move the trash so we can get inside the subway?
Sounds like a plan, dude.
Fine. Let's go, Kyoko.
See you later! Come on, Misako.
Why'd you stop me? I was gonna rip that guy's head off!
That's why I stopped you.
Lame.
Come on, you heard him. All we need is a VIP pass and he'll let us on board.
Yeah, but where do we get one?
There's a fancy hotel on the other end of Ocean Heights. Lots of rich people there. I bet one of them has a VIP pass.
Or you could just beat them up and get on the fucking boat. Go to this spot, do this thing so that you can do the thing, so that you can do the thing, so that you can do the thing.
I bet Rick
And the side quests just gave experience and items to equip that barely made a difference to how you actually played ever. Not to mention the combat itself, which we will get into later, does not reinforce exploration in the slightest until you have all of the moves unlocked. What I mean by that is, for example, think of any Metroidvania where backtracking is an essential part of the game's philosophy. The first time you go through a large hallway full of enemies, you go through very carefully fighting all of the enemies and dodging attacks using your moveset to get through the hall. The second time, after you have progressed more and have more abilities, you can now get through this area more gracefully, taking out enemies more efficiently using movement options you didn't have before. You can feel your progress. By the end of the game, the same hallway has turned into a simple endeavor that now becomes more about using your maximum potential to make traversal as efficient as possible. This is why backtracking is forgiven in Metroidvania games, because it incentivizes you to interact with the area you've already been through in a different way. River City Girls does not reinforce exploration through gameplay and has bad rewards. The sequel, however, does have some good rewards. Unfortunately, they all show up at a time where you already are so strong that it's not really necessary. There's a lot to find as well, and some of them are extremely well hidden. If you want to 100% the exploration of this game, I would advise treating everything like an entrance and holding the light punch button to enter it. This brings me to one of my biggest gripes about this game. The map sucks. It just does. It has kind of a Metroid-styled map in which you go right and that takes you one square to the right. However, and this is where things get all kinds of fucky, the direction an entrance somewhere takes you is not always corresponding to the direction it takes you on the map. For instance, there's an entrance to a basement at the top of the square that leads to the south of the map because it's a basement. But my monkey brain is like, oh, I need to go up on the map, so let's go up. I realize it's a personal complaint, but I genuinely think the map could have more conveyance than that. Or better yet, have a mini-map on the screen so I can tell what path leads me where without opening my phone and getting my ass beat by enemies that show up while I'm trying to figure it out. When you play online, you can't pause, so yeah. We will get into what online has to offer as well later. River City Girls 2 has more options for combos and various expressions, so it makes backtracking through areas more fun than in the first. Overall, I would say that everything the second game does is a step above the first by a lot. There is one thing I need to vent about before I move on to the next section. Why in the ever-living fuck is the interact button still the light attack button? Why? Why? Just why? We have been struggling with this since the 90s. It's been like 30 years and you still make the punch button the interact button. Raise your hand if you think it's fun to get your ass beat because you're standing on a weapon and you didn't know it was there, so you pick it up instead of punching. Raise your hand if you think it's fun when you are going in for an attack on an enemy at a critical moment and suddenly you're vacuumed into a completely different position to untie a comrade and then get assaulted. They even made it so you had to hold down the button to go to a new area because they knew it was bullshit to have the punch button be the interact button. You know what would be better and way more efficient? Making it a different fucking button. You literally have 30 years of game development to look at for inspiration. I can't even formulate how mad this makes me. Moving on. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Complexity is the fun part of a beat 'em up. How do combos feel? Is there a lot of variety of moves, etc.? Something that a lot of games suffer from is finding the optimal thing to do and just doing that for the whole game. This can be avoided by making the enemies you interact with unique in the way that they approach you. For instance, Donovan will 90% of the time uppercut you out of the air if you try to jump kick at him in Streets of Rage. So you have to change the way you interact with that character. Some characters block nearly everything you do, and you have to learn to use your grab to break the guard and various other things that these kinds of games implement all the time. One more example. Let's say you're in a mid-air combo, but when you land it's likely that you're going to get hit by enemies waiting for you. So you have choices to air dash out, or do a dive kick, or grab the enemy mid-air and body slam them into the other ones. All that sounds fun, right? That's what it's all about. The moment-to-moment decision making that makes gameplay fun. So, does River City Girls provide a good level of complexity? So, it's not an easy question to answer. The enemies do have differences to the way they attack you, but for the most part, you can dispatch them all the same way with no issue. That makes essentially every enemy you face combo fodder. Most enemies in River City Girls 2 will try to surround you, so getting away with comboing an entire group can be a little more rare. Combos are fun for a time. River City Girls 1 is the barest of bones, and a lot of times you will literally attack somebody and the attack will absolutely not register. So that's pretty bad. After you get all the upgrades, the combat does become a little better as you can make more unique combos, but it's not necessarily enough. To ask someone to run around to a certain point of the map so they can tell you to run around to another part of the map and over, it needs to be fun to fight people all the time. Not just at the end when you get all the moves, or at the beginning when you're still figuring out combos or whatnot. River City Girls has the saving grace of having decent bosses. All of them are interesting in a different way, and I can appreciate that, even if Habari is essentially a waiting game. Obobo, on the other hand, is a wall of difficulty that is insane, but I'll get into why later. For the most part, the bosses are well designed and fun to fight. If there is one thing you would absolutely ask the sequel to improve, it would be those things, right? I'm pleased to say that the combat has become much more expressive in the sequel. It still feels like it has some major flaws, but overall, it is a vast improvement over 1. River City Girls 2 goes the route of air combos. As a fan of fighting games, this is awesome. It feels like a Marvel vs. Capcom game is working its way into a beat-em-up, especially with assists coming in to extend combos even further. If there is one compliment I can give, is that they really give an effort to make the combat expressive in River City Girls 2. However, there are issues with both of them that they share. It's time to get specific. In a fighting game that has the same control scheme, essentially you have light attacks, heavy attacks, and special attacks. We're not going to include the jump button here because it's not necessary. To make any of these moves flow, you need to implement something called move canceling. Move canceling is essentially the ability to stop what you're doing instantly and do another thing. Like, start comboing somebody and then cancel into a back attack to cover your back. Or something like light, heavy, super. But for some reason, you can't cancel heavy into super. Why? Because the game says so. The game has a feeling of, this is how you're supposed to do this thing, so you're gonna do it this way. Which is the opposite of how these games should feel. I should feel like I have the option of avoiding damage, and the lack of versatility when I start attacking someone makes it so hard to do so. Counters are a part of the moveset from the start, but are just as useful, if not less useful than blocking in general. The aforementioned back attack comes out super slow and is not usable in the middle of combos, making it worthless. In the second game, they made it a movement option like a backflip or a boxer dodge, but once again, it's worthless because you cannot cancel into it. There are many things like this that hold the game back from being amazing to play. One of the big contenders being the throw. The throw is fucking garbage. I don't know who thought that this was the way that you should be throwing people in side-scroller beat-em-ups, but this is stupid, dude. Every throw throws completely over the other adversaries. And then on top of that, it doesn't give you any invincibility frames. So there's number one, you can only grab people who are dizzy, so you can't do it at all times. So that sucks. 2, it doesn't make you invincible, so why would you want to grab them in the first place? 3, it doesn't have any interaction with the other enemies. It makes it completely worthless. This section is going to be short because it's directly linked to complexity. Is learning the fun aspects of combat complexity fun and rewarding? I would say yes, to an extent. There's a point in both games where it feels awesome testing out new moves and linking them together with assists and all kinds of things, but after that time is over, it kind of builds a mundane nature where you end up doing things you know work well, which is present in almost every game in this genre and isn't really a problem for most of them. Except both of these games end up overstaying their welcome compared to the depth that they have in the combat. Because you run all over the map trying to get things, to get the things, to get the things, it makes you want to run past encounters rather than fight anyone so you can do the objective. Speaking of which, the incentive to not fight anyone is even higher when you start to forget what you were doing on your way to the objective in the first place. In conclusion, fighting is an optional endeavor in most cases where you are likely to burn yourself out in combat rather than engage in a fun experience on the way to the objective. It's not bad, but it's not designed to work with the core concept of the game being an open world objective-based beat-em-up. There are moments where they lock you into a fight, which incentivizes you to level up so you can survive these moments. The bosses are also a factor in whether you should be leveling or not. So leveling does have a payoff in the fact that if you are not leveling, you will have a terrible time. Once again, we'll get into more of that later. And actually, we'll get into it right now because we're into the next section. Balance in these two games is going to come from a lot of different things, but I will try to break them down a little bit. Let's start with leveling. Leveling up in any game is the most basic way of balancing a game. If something is too hard, go level up and make the battle easier. RPG elements add a level of unique experience that other games do not have. One person's experience with games can be completely different from another's, simply because they were different levels at different times. This is a good thing because the individual experience is important, whereas having a low player level makes it so that you spend time not progressing and instead grinding to level up. On the other hand, someone who has a high player level will generally blow through any challenge that the game could present them. River City Girls has a leveling system, which means they have to account for that in their game balance. And I feel like they just didn't. It kind of feels like the whole game is just sort of progressing around your level, so you never feel like you're just plowing through enemies like tissue paper. You never get to go back to old areas and feel the power of defeating low-level enemies, which, in my eyes, is one of the most fun things about RPGs. Enemies get more spongy as you get further into the game, so you'll need to keep up by getting into fights and leveling up if you do not want to spend 30 minutes for each fight. Now, for the sole reason I did not enjoy River City Girls 1 the first time I played it. This was a revelation for me. Looking back after playing 2 times all the way through, I never fucking knew until after in editing that your stats got boosted when you eat food for the first time. So I was going through the game severely underpowered for everything, which in turn made everything take forever to get through, which made getting to the end and watching the ending so damn disappointing because there's a lot of work that went into all that shit. So, when I replayed the game, I was tipped off to the fact, I think on Twitter, that items boost your stats. So, even though I didn't notice that stat increase until after I beat the game, I noticed I had a much better experience playing the game this time because the game is balanced with the expectation that you boost your stats with store food. it's not an insignificant boost either. Look at this. This is the file where I paid no mind to the store food. And this is the playthrough where I ate everything I could find. Look at the difference in the stats. Number one, I'm lower level in the one where I'm boosted, okay? The attack difference is insane. Most stats are pretty negligible, like the SP stat for being how much special gauge you can build up, and the WP stat for like weapons that are shit in the first game, but whatever. Look at how much strength I am missing from simply not eating. Take it from me, if you play this game, or either of these games, eat everything. Otherwise you're going to have a very hard time. The thing is, I played this game twice and did not see anything saying, hey, eat the food, it boosts your stats. And we're talking about River City Girls 1 here, by the way. It just happens to be very discreet at the top left corner when you eat in the shops. So one of the two things needs to happen for this to be balanced. One, balance the game around your base level stats, and all stat bonuses you get from food bonuses are bonus. Right? Just make them BOGO. Whatever. Two, out of the gate, just tell me to eat the food. Right? This is why earlier I mentioned Abobo being such a wall of difficulty. I literally was not strong enough to survive the attacks. Luckily, River City Girls 2 does outright tell you and makes it much more apparent that your stats do get boosted. At least that was addressed, and I really appreciate it. The other way you balance this game would be how fair are the enemy AI? Do they constantly read your inputs and wait for the perfect opportunity to strike you? Do they have extremely spammable long-range attacks that constantly ruin the flow of hand-to-hand combat? Once again, I have to praise the game for making the enemy AI really tame. Maybe too tame, actually. The AI don't abuse their strongest attacks at a range that makes it impossible to approach them, but they don't really utilize their skills either. Like I said earlier, they all sort of just end up being punching bags for you at some point. The second game introduces status effects, so some projectiles become a little more dangerous than they were before, making you play around them more often, so that's good. But it's rare to see, even with the status effects being a thing. I can probably count on all of my fingers how many times status effects have been applied to me. So if anything, I would say the AI could use a little more utility to them, so each fight feels more unique than, watch out, he's gonna punch you. So, there are some honorable mentions in this section that I didn't really get to whine about yet. But before I do, I need to clarify that there will be major spoilers from this point until the conclusion. So go ahead and skip ahead if you'd rather not know anything about the ending of River City Girls 1 or 2. So, now that everyone is settled down and ready, let's get into it. Random thing number 1. First things first, I have never in my life been offended by the ending of a game and its sequel's ending. There are multiple endings to the game, but it's only marginally different. So, these asshole girls, Mami and Hasabe, are messing with you the whole game, talking about how Kunio and Reiki are their boyfriends, and they constantly put the main characters down, and they're just little shitheads the whole time. But there's no payoff to that. Sure, if you spend an ungodly amount of time playing the game, you can fight them as a boss, but it changes like nothing, dude. The initial ending is you end up finding out that the boyfriends aren't your boyfriends, so they were right, okay, first off, and they didn't want anything to do with you. And then the game ends. The second ending is exactly the same, except for instead of, them just leaving you behind, they're like, hey, would you like to go get some hamburgers or something? So you I guess you go on a date. What? What? The issue is they're trying to be funny, but it's not funny. On top of that, it doesn't even make sense because they have a ransom text at the beginning of the game that shows them getting kidnapped with no explanation as to who or where that even came from. You would assume it's the Yakuza, but no, literally everyone is chilling and living their best life, and then you come in, you beat their ass, you get very little information about anything, and then you go somewhere else and you repeat the process for no reason. It's fucking stupid. In the second game, it's not really the ending that's the issue, it's the ending song. I wasn't going to say anything about the music being terrible, but now I am. I mean, really? Blah blah blah, something I can't rhyme? These are actual lyrics, by the way. For realsies, you couch potato, thank you for all your time. So not only are you A, not going to put effort into writing a decent outro song, but on top of that, B, you're going to insult me by calling me a couch potato after I played the game and beat it. I get that it's supposed to be funny, but it's not funny. The game's sense of humor is pretentious and meta, in the worst way I can imagine. I can't be the only one who finds these jokes dumb and forced. Random thing number 2. The online for this game, and we're talking about River City Girls 2 here, might as well not even exist. The connection is okay at best with the whole second of delay for your inputs, which isn't uncommon for these kinds of games, but whatever. But because the game is so objective based, you really need some way to communicate with your partner, like a "this way" or like a "I need some help over here" call or something, anything, dude. And God help you if you connected to somebody with crossplay, my lord.
We did it! Even easier than real dancing.
Quick, take a photo so we can show that green bodyguard. Quick, take a photo
Whoa, whoa,
so we
whoa.
can show that green bodyguard. Quick.
Shit, what the fuck is happening, dude? What in the... Random thing number 3. WayForward is a good game dev team who strives for quality in their games. However, no one is perfect, and in multiple instances I discovered bugs, sometimes game-breaking glitches. Check this out. What, did you see that? There's no way that's not a glitch. Like, what is that, dude? Random thing number 4. Godai's mission to take photos all over in River City Girls 2 is explained like dog water. I had to look up what I was supposed to do after trying for like 40 minutes to figure out what he meant. Okay, I'm kind of picking at straws here at this point, so let's move on to the conclusion. So overall, I sound like I'm hating on this game series, and you're right, but only half right. I actually like a lot of aspects about this game, but my focus is what could make this genre survive. I don't know if you noticed, but people who play these kinds of games are people who already like these kinds of games. Presentation is the sole thing pulling people into this game. But when they give the genre a chance and don't have a good time for one reason or another, it kills any future for the genre that person had. How likely are you to play a new game in a genre you didn't like for the first time? for casual gamers, probably never, unless the game has unreal prestige. When a new game comes along that genuinely has a lot of care and effort put into the end result, it uplifts the whole genre and brings about a renaissance of new reformed game design. Think Street Fighter 4 for essentially bringing 2.5D fighting games into a mainstream appeal. Okay, they didn't have those before. Like, I mean, they did, but it was like they made that shit the standard, you know? Think about Shovel Knight being a turning point for indie platformer games' level of quality. Not that there weren't quality platform games by indie developers until that point, but like, they set that bar, you know what I mean? Think about how Dark Souls redefined combat in a way that's more engaging than any hack and slash anyone had ever played before. Like, it's crazy. I mean, Dark Souls innovated so many fucking things, but that's not the point. Side-scroller beat-em-ups fell out of favor, even in their height in the 90s, for rehashing and making the same mistakes over and over and over again. That's why today, I find it ever more important, if you like these kinds of games, to not let this shit slide ever again. Show your love and appreciation for the genre. Tell people you love River City Girls and Guardian Heroes and Streets of Rage and Double Dragon Neon or whatever your favorite is. But hold these games accountable for when they make mistakes and when they make strides to be as good as they can be. River City Girls is not a bad game, but it is not a great game either. However, it and other side-scroller beat-em-ups should be encouraged to make better choices so that WayForward or anyone can make something with the same core concept and create something that makes people want to say, holy shit, I gotta play that. I want the Hollow Knight of beat-em-ups, you know? Like, the real labor of love of what makes the genre great. And there you have it. Most, if not all, my thoughts on this game series, River City Girls. I know it's sort of all-encompassing and weird and probably way off base of what my my viewer base is used to, but that's okay. We probably won't be visiting this kind of format very often. And that's okay. That's not what this channel's about. I just wanted to use my platform to talk about something I was passionate about. And if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, let me know, you know? And I hope you guys do try it out. Do try out games that you like. But like I said, hold them responsible, you know, like hold companies responsible for making decisions and stuff like this. It's just, we got to, especially for the games that we love, the type of games that we love. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble, so let me get out of here. Have a good day, you guys. Later.